Nairac seems to have had huge overconfidence in his own abilities. He was a very skilled boxer. He was clearly a very intelligent man, but being intelligent doesn't always mean that you're necessarily clever or streetwise. He was a Catholic, and he overestimated the extent to which the conflict in the north was a religious divide rather than a colonial, political, military, revolutionary struggle. He had befriended children who were from an Irish Catholic background, a very wealthy business background, who used to have a summer house in Spiddal in Galway. And Nairac had visited there, would have been more familiar with things like the Irish language, Irish customs, and obviously cultural Catholicism than the average British intelligence officer. But he really he let that confidence lead him away. This is my feeling. He used to do things like go out on patrol in British Army uniform in an area, and then he would turn up doing undercover work in another village 8 to 10 miles away. And I mean, people have cars at this stage. This is 1977 when he's killed. You know, it doesn't mean that somebody hasn't gone to the big town to do their shopping. Nairac as well strikes me as having been a bit of a fantasist. Like, I have a photograph in the book that shows Robert Nairac in his British Army jacket, wielding a Thompson machine gun and wearing a black beret with an Easter lily pinned to it. And apparently sometimes he went on patrol like this, and it's like he's cosplaying or LARPing as a member of the Provisional IRA. Like, certainly a Thompson machine gun and a black beret with an Easter lily on it, these are not standard British Army issue. As to the Miami Showband thing, there are allegations of other killings that he was involved in. Now, I talked to people who have researched this, who will be researched it in more depth than I have, and basically I pared back a lot of what I said about Robert Nairac as a result. They've said that claims about his involvement in different killings have been exaggerated. However, one part that I definitely left in is the Miami Showband massacre in 1975, when it looks like either the Glenanne gang or British Army intelligence working with the UVF, some of whom were also serving in the UDR, pick up Fran O'Toole's Miami Showband, very popular band that played both sides during the Troubles, and basically tried to frame them by putting a bomb into their tour bus. The bomb explodes prematurely, and then the survivors of the band are machine gunned. And the saxophonist, Des Macaulay, who was there on the night, says that the orders and the whole operation was being directed by an Englishman with a crisp English accent, and he said he later saw a photograph of Nairac and recognized him. Now, the official investigation says that Robert Nairac was on leave at the time and would have been in Britain, would not have been there. But I mean, you know, I cannot doubt Des as an eyewitness. He was there, I was not. Nairac eventually goes to the 3 steps in, close to the border, and there's an Irish rebel band playing at the time. Apparently he goes there to meet a contact, and as soon as he walks into the bar, he makes himself obvious. Now, I don't care how good he thought his accent or his idioms or his knowledge would have been. He makes this fuss and says, "Oh, I've lost my cigarettes. Someone's stolen my cigarettes." So he goes straight into the bar, draws attention to himself. And then when the band starts singing like Wolf Tone style rebel songs, he insists on getting up on stage and singing. He is announcing himself to the whole bar, and people are suspicious. They're saying, something up with his accent. Who's he? He's not from around here. What's he doing here? And a local woman is sent up to dance with him to see if he is armed, if he's wearing a gun in a holster. And eventually what happens is people in the bar grow suspicious of him. I think the initial group of people who capture Nairac are not themselves Provisional IRA volunteers. They're just locals who would have been sympathetic. And basically they beat him or wrestle him in the car park. And again, Nairac had been a very accomplished boxer, but it's different in a boxing ring to fighting 7 people or however many in a bar fight. He's bundled away, he's taken south of the border, and he's executed, and he's buried in a shallow grave. Now, what seems to happen is that in the security forces and Gardaí response to this, I should say that when he's executed, it's provisional IRA volunteers who are actually called to get a gun and to do the job. And apparently leading provisionals were very angry at the time that he was executed in the night instead of being held and interrogated. So it's not a great operation from a provisional IRA standpoint either. What happens is that as the arrests begin, somebody who was involved in the killing appears to worry that, oh, they're going to sing like a tree full of canaries. So they go out on their own or with some other assistance. They exhume Nairac's body and it's reburied at another location. And when the Gardaí search the area where they've been told Nairac is buried, they find a clump of hair, they find some shell casings, and I think they find Nairac's holster. Now, Nairac's body is still missing. And I think that regardless of whether he was involved in the Miami Showband massacre or anything else, you know, officially according to the Geneva Convention, when a conflict ends, you return the bodies, and his body is still missing, and the ICLVR are still seeking information. One thing that the ICLVR, the Commission for the Location of Victims' Remains, have said is that the story that is out there, the propaganda story that Nairac's body was destroyed in a meat grinder in a local meat rendering factory, is absolutely nonsense. It does not have any foundation in fact. That story, as far as I can see, is first brought up by a guy called Eamon Collins, who was an informer in the Provisional IRA, who later wrote a book called Killing Rage. As far as I can see, that's the first time that story turns up. And it appears to be based on a story from the 1920s. There's two RIC, long story short, I'll condense it. There's two RIC constables or black and tans in Tralee, Bright and Waters. Waters is an Irishman, Bright is an Englishman. They're abducted one night while out courting local girls. They're executed and their bodies are buried in Slobland at Blennerville, just outside Tralee. We know this from IRA accounts. That's where the bodies are buried. The British, however, come up with this propaganda story that they had been killed by being thrown alive into a furnace and their bodies were destroyed. And as far as I can see, that is the origin of the Nairac meat grinder story, which has been totally discredited at this stage.
Interesting. God above that, I always every now and again, like I do think about that Nairac thing, like what was in his head.
Well, I suppose war does funny things to people, and in order to gather intelligence, you need to put yourself at risk to a certain extent. I found British Army officers acting the same way in the 1920s. You have a guy called, what's his name? He is with the Ox and Bucks Light Infantry. He's their intelligence officer, Colonel J.B. Jarvis in Limerick, and he dresses up in civilian clothes, goes out into the countryside carrying 2 carrier pigeons and disappears for 2 weeks. And the local RIC are going, this guy's nuts, he'll be killed. East Clare at the time would have been like South Armagh in the 70s. And a week later, they hear from him. A carrier pigeon arrives back with a note tied to its leg. And the note says, still going strong, have eaten the other pigeon. And amazingly, the guy arrives back and he's an intelligence officer and he's taking risks. Now, personally, I think he got some British soldiers killed in the area he was working in, but again, that's in some of my previous books if people are interested in that case.
Yeah, the accent thing. I mean, even the fact that he had gone to Galway so many times, it would nearly make you think that he'd have been way better off even pretending he was from Galway, because at least people from South Armagh.
Apparently he did that once. Apparently he did that once and he was caught out. He used to say that he was Danny McErlane from Belfast, and his Belfast accent was so hokey. There used to be a Belfast bread company at the time called McErlane's, and in the 3 steps in, somebody said, what did he say his name was? McErlane. He got that name off of a loaf of bread. But apparently on one occasion, Nairac was asked, where are you from? And he said, oh, I'm from Belfast. Oh, what part of Belfast? Well, actually, my family moved to Belfast. Originally, we're from Spiddle. And he said, all right, I know people from Spiddle. I have relatives in Spiddle. Where are you from in Spiddle, did you say? And he said, oh, do you know, when you drive out the road there towards Barna, the last house there, it's painted green on whatever side of the road. He said, that's my place. And this guy went, oh, yeah. Oh, you're not that family at all. And Nairac closed off the conversation and disappeared. But he was taking a lot of risks. That's a story not in the book, but that's a story I picked up in Connemara itself. So
Interesting. Yeah, it does seem from what you read about him generally that he was kind of a wild man, and he'd be that type to just kind of fucking do something without thinking. And to be honest with you, I always think that if he had the confidence to go into such a hostile area, a pub in such an area, and do the accent, he probably would have to have gotten away with it once before, unless he just unless it was his first try, which I wouldn't believe. But yeah,
Well, I
anyway.
suppose you can only